Today I will be making a number of jigs to allow me to quickly and accurately install the hardware into a round casement window that I am currently making. The jigs all go well, but after doing a test install I realised the lock I have may not actually fit this window. It's too late to find a new one as it's a specific type for this client. Follow along and see if I can fix this today. So I am going to be making a hinge jig, a jig for the front face of the lock, another to house the lock itself, and finally one for the strike plate. First up, it's the hinge jig. The first time I made one of these, I was following a video and it was pretty complicated to get my head around. It was supposed to be a 30-minute jig and it took me 2 hours. However, this time I have the last one I made as a reference, and that's making things much easier. So first you need to make sure that the wood you're using is thick enough in comparison to your flush trim bit. The flush trim bit needs to be able to reference this wood and go into your window to the right depth. So a stubby bit makes things easier here. First piece to cut should be around 3 times the length of the hinge. The next piece should fit either side of the hinge, but also be the same width as the hinge leaf. I don't have a thicknesser, so I'm going to add a shim later to fix this. So fit these 2 parts either side of the hinge. The next part can be made from one wider piece of wood, but as all my parts are coming from this one batten, I think it's easier to make it with another 2 equal sized pieces glued and screwed on. The next part allows the jig to wrap around the window frame and holds it in place. This part should be the length of the jig. Once all the pieces are attached, you're basically done. The first time I used this jig, I set the depth stop on the router to cut out the depth of the hinge leaf, and at the same time it will cut out part of the jig. You now have a jig that will work for that exact hinge. I will add it to my collection and try and buy these hinges in the future. Next is the jig for the faceplate of the lock. This one is very straightforward and just requires the hole the size of the flush trim router bit. I add some pieces to make it easier to clamp the jig to the frame when I need it. And that's it. So then comes the lock jig. This is the one which will be giving me all my problems today. Although not so much the jig itself, but where the lock and handle end up situated because of it. So this one is a bit more complicated. It requires me to make a base for the jig that the whole router can sit on top of, and then move back and forward the full length of the lock. So I do some extremely complicated mathematics, get it wrong twice, and cut the base to size on a miter saw when I've got the right measurements. Once I have my base, I can make some supports for underneath which will just stop the jig moving left to right on the window frame. I also do that wrong the first time, so I re-drill the holes and put it in the right place. Now I need to create the fence around the outside that allows the router to move just as much as it's allowed to in order to create a cavity to house the lock. And that's it. I do my first cut on a test piece and I realise it's too long. I didn't account for the router bit diameter, it seems. Luckily it's too long rather than too short, so I just add a little shim in there and now it's a functional lock housing jig. So now it's time to put all my jiggling to the test, and it's important to mention that it is in fact 41 degrees today, centigrade. That's like 100 Fahrenheit. And that makes thinking really quite difficult. If this all goes right, no problem. That will be a happy day. But of course, it's not going to go right, so let's see how that pans out. So the issue here is that the client is living on an archipelago. What that means is many things, but in this instance it means that the window must have stainless steel fittings to avoid corrosion damage. So 3 weeks ago I ordered the fittings and a week ago they arrived. In 1 week I need to send the window. And with that maths, we can see that I don't have time to order a new handle if, for example, if this one was too wide. And solid stainless steel window fittings aren't the easiest thing to find in rural Portugal. So I cut in all my shapes into a test piece, install the lock and handle, and notice that the handle is extremely close to the edge of the frame. I knew my window was small and the tolerances were going to be tight, so I ordered a narrow lock. I checked the dimensions, but the handles didn't have much choice, so I chose the one with the name Slimline, assuming that that would be the most narrow one that they had. That does not seem to be the case, or perhaps it is the slimmest one they had, but they just don't have much choice. I would like to say that the stress started to make me sweat at this point, but that was already happening due to the high temperature, so things kind of just continued as they were. I had options though. My first was to just bury the lock a little bit deeper in the frame. It wouldn't look beautiful, but it would be barely noticeable in my opinion. Burying the lock deeper would in turn push the handle slightly further across the window frame, thus giving more space for the edge of the window to butt against the jamb. Or I could cut a little bit out of the jamb, but I would much rather not do this because A, it would be noticeable all the time, and B, it would make the already fairly small jamb even smaller. Or option C, go look for new stainless steel slim handles in a city that only sells basic stuff. So my plan is to go and have a look for an alternative handle next time I go to the city. And if I can't find one, I will just push the lock a little bit further back into the frame. Job done. Lunch. I cannot describe how much I need this. So after lunch, for the afternoon, I decided to stay away from the casement window for my sanity, and I make a start on an order I received a few days ago. A 72cm pine pivot window. I prepared the saw, cut the pieces, glue them up, and 4:30 in the afternoon I am done. I swear the universe doesn't want me to work 9 to 5. It always gives me the end of the day off. Anyway, thanks universe. And that's it for today. I'm looking for feedback on this series. Please tell me how I can improve it. See you next time.